Welkom terug. Ik hoop dat jullie allemaal een goede lunch hebben gehad. And I also will switch to English because this session will be in English. So first of all, welcome to our English guests as well. Because in the morning we heard, Antoine, that the applications of generative AI in the quality engineering and testing world are the future, and that they really could reshape the way we do testing at the moment. And our next speaker, Matthijs van Bree, he will explore the crucial role of quality engineering in the development of the large language models. Matthijs is artificial intelligence lead by Society, and I would say, Matthijs van Bree, give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. I looked at the program of today and I saw that a lot of presentations were about how to apply generative AI for quality engineering. Well, quality engineering, generative AI is of course a wonderful technique. And this magical black box can be used to achieve quality engineering principles. But how do we make sure that this generative AI system is engineered by quality engineering principles itself? Today, I want to zoom in and take you on a journey to discover how we can make sure that generative AI systems are quality engineered. But first, let me take you on a journey, because I think most of you know that AI existed before the existence of ChatGPT last year. AI exists almost 80 years now, and we have come a far way since existence. And in the beginning, the process of training a system that is on par with human-level performance, it went like this. First, we needed to gather a lot of data. And this data, it was used afterwards to train a model. And iteratively, by adding new data, better data to our data set and training new models, we came to a model that was at the same performance level as humans. And in some cases, let me take the white line behind me. It's about handwriting recognition. It took almost 30 years to create a system that is on the same level of performance as humans. And currently, we live in a new time where we not train a single machine learning model on a specific data set that can only do a specific task that we teach it, but we have models that learn from a lot of different types of data to do multiple tasks. It's the era of generative AI. And currently what we're seeing is we don't need to train a model necessarily. We can just give it the context that it needs to perform a certain task. And very fast, it can get to the level that it's on the same level as a human. And that's insane. And I also want to take this moment to do a little exercise. So take a moment and imagine a scenario where a salmon is swimming upstream. And salmon, yes, it's a fish. So a fish swimming upstream. Please take a moment. I can imagine that you had something like this in mind. And I'm quite sure that not everyone imagined exactly this thing, but it's something similar probably. And when we ask a generative AI model to show us an image of salmon swimming upstream, this is what it showed me. And technically, it is right. It is salmon swimming upstream, but it's not what we had in mind. And this amazing technology, sometimes it looks like it's even smarter than a human. It can do so many things. But we have to keep in mind that although it knows a lot of our perception of the world, it doesn't live in the world where we live in. Okay, let me take another example. So I asked it a question, quite a simple question. I have a 4-liter bucket and an 8-liter bucket. I want to measure 4 liters of water. How should I do this? And as a human, I would think, okay, a 4-year-old could probably solve it. I just fill up the 4-liter bucket and I have 4 liters of water. Voila. However, it gave me this guide how to do it. And it needs the 2 buckets to solve the challenge. And I didn't say use both buckets. I said, how can I do it? But yeah, it tells me fill up the 4-liter bucket, pour it in the 8-liter bucket, then fill the 4-liter bucket again, and then you have 2 buckets containing 4 liter. Great. It's kind of the answer that I wanted, but it's not the answer that I was looking for. And also, if I change the 4 with the 8, it's a small change that you would think it wouldn't change much to the scenario. For the model, it gave me a completely different answer, still a guide, but this time it tells me something else that is also not right. So this is another example of why these models, like the output shouldn't be, taken over for granted, taken as for granted. We should very carefully test these models, because if we use this in business processes and let them make decisions, then things can go wrong very fast. And a colleague of ours, a couple of months ago, he published a blog, Thijs Pepping, he's called, and he described an LLM, a large language model, as a stochastic parrot. And I very much like that. Let me try to do the same thing today. So imagine a large language model as a parrot that flew into a bookcase and started reading all the books that were in there. And parrots, of course, they can't read, but help me out here a little bit. So this parrot, he learns based on the books that he read what our perception of the world is. Because our perception, we were the ones that put the text on paper. And when we start to ask him questions, he will probably know what are probable answers based on the question that we ask. So if I ask, who am I? Then it will know, okay, he wants to know something about himself, but I don't know who he is, so he will answer, you are a human who is asking me a question. Okay, yeah, sure. But what if we give him a little bit more context information? So I say, I'm Matthijs, who am I? And he tells me, or it tells me, sorry, it's not a human, right? It tells me, you are Matthijs Sombré, because I just told it that. And if you dive a little bit under the hood of how this model of AI or AI system is making choices, then if we stop it generating in the middle of a sentence, we can see that it generates word by word. So after each word, it sees a list of words, and all these words have a certain probability, a certain chance of being the next word in that sentence. And with a little bit of randomness, it decides, okay, this is the next word that is going to be in the sentence. And it's very well in doing this. And because it's not always the most probable word, it also gives us sometimes a very creative answer. And that's also why the system is so amazing. So we've seen that a large language model is not a human. But neither is it a traditional software. If we look at traditional software, it is often rule-based, while AI systems are probabilistic or non-deterministic. And classical software is often it's often quite easy to picture all possible scenarios. They are easy. I make it sound maybe a little bit underwhelming, but it is possible to catch all the edge cases that are out there. For an AI system, we don't know what is going to respond. So we need to very thoroughly test these systems. Another challenge, I would say, that we see with these AI systems is that not only the model should be tested, but also the system. So the model containing all the system prompts and everything we give it, but also the data that we utilize and pass to the model. For instance, if we have a question and answering based on a knowledge store or an internal intranet, we also need to make sure that that data it is tested, because it will affect the performance of our AI system. Basically, the most important thing to keep in mind is AI is part of a system. And thus, it needs to be tested with the same quality principles and engineering excellence in mind. And 4 years ago, we developed a framework, we at Sogeti, and that framework was focused on creating AI projects with quality engineering principles. The quality AI framework, we called it. And over the last year, we updated this framework to also capture the latest large language model trends. Because these systems also need a different way of testing, of course. If we look at the box at the top of the page, at the start, we need to make sure that we define our goals, or our problems, I mean. So what are the actual problems that we want to solve with the use case that we're working on? Why are we creating this generative AI system? We also need to make sure that upfront we start thinking about our test strategy. So defining user acceptance tests, for instance. Another thing that is very important is to already have in mind when is our project successful. So defining our KPIs. It's of paramount importance. In the next phase, the data ops phase, and so this is not about training the model, because often these models are already pre-trained, but it's about the data that is used to inject in prompts. So for instance, before I mentioned internet, it's a data source that is used in these systems, but it also needs to be tested. It needs to be checked for data quality, for data consistency. So is the data of a similar format? You can imagine, from my daily work, I also saw a lot of service tickets, for IT incident tickets, and there I noticed that the quality of these tickets, the difference between them is huge. A junior engineer maybe puts in the effort to give a very long description of what is the problem and how we solved it. But a senior sometimes often only mentions a couple of keywords. Broken, doesn't work. No, a little bit more elaborate, of course. But because the data isn't consistent, it can cause for problems later on. You can imagine that if you make a certain system prompt, so you tell it, okay, you're an AI chatbot and you need to respond, if you need to be able to answer how to solve a certain ticket, based on a description, and if not all the descriptions are complete, you will never give a solid answer, or not always give a solid answer. So we need to make sure that the data consistency is in place. Also, we need to check if there is a data bias. And data bias means the data isn't representative for the world that we live in, or there could be a discriminatory pattern in the data, and we also want to check if that's not the case. Also, of course, personal identifiable information we want to remove in the cases that we don't want it, and toxicity, meaning if there are curse words in the data that we have, we need to remove them. So data quality checks is something that we do in every project. In the next phase, ML, you see there, the machine learning phase, we don't train the model, but we look at which model should we use and how should we use it. And of course, we can look at the classical performance metrics. So we can dive into the papers and see, okay, for this certain evaluation data set that evaluates the common sense reasoning of these models, it performs in a certain degree, and that is good because we want that. But we should also make sure that the model itself has not a bias already that we want to overcome. The most important part in this phase is adversarial testing. So trying to give it inputs in a way that it gives us the wrong answer. We're trying to fool it, and if we know how to fool it, we know how we can cover that leakage. So some things that I see in the projects that I do is we use public benchmarks to get an acquaintance with the model to see how well it performs on a certain task. You look on the internet for data sets that are similar to the use case you're working on, but are not exactly the same. And by doing this, it is quite a cheap method of getting a good intuition of in what cases does my model perform well? Can I use it for my use case? Also, use case specific testing is one of the best methods to test your large language model. Use case specific testing is we create a golden data set with all edge cases that we can think about, and we use it to test how well our model performs on the edge case data set that we created. And you can imagine that this is a little bit more expensive. It takes us a little bit more time to create such a golden standard data set, but it's super valuable because it already gives us an idea about how good this model will function when we put it in production. In the next step, we're actually working on the deployment of the model. And here we, of course, need to test the robustness. So can we stress test the model? What is the throughput that it can take on? Also, we need to monitor the inputs of the model. So we want to make sure that if someone abuses the model, that we know how it was abused, because then we can solve that leakage later on. And the last part here is we need to make sure that it's constantly monitored on drift. And drift means that the data that we use, it probably changes over time, and it also makes our model give different answers over time. And we want to make sure that if the model starts to give us different answers, we'll notice before it becomes a problem. And in production, there are a couple of tests we can do. Of course, user testing. Here we have a user group of end user group that works with our system. And every time we give a new version of our system, they give us feedback on the cases that work, the cases that don't work, and afterwards we improve the model or the system. This is an iterative process. It takes a lot of time, but there is also a little bit an easier approach to this. And I have to mention, this is not good in all cases, because sometimes it doesn't cover everything, but we have a large language model that we can use as a tester. And I hear you thinking, okay, other side of the coin, very nice, but we're back again to the other side of the coin, because now we're using quality of generative AI to assure quality engineering for generative AI systems. But how does it work? Well, imagine that you already have the cases that you want to test in mind. Afterward, you start, you give it to your AI system. The AI system is creating answers for the cases that you have. And eventually, you use the large language model to predict if the answer is right or it is wrong. And it's quite an easy way to utilize a large language model to make sure that it is performing well enough. And in practice, I see that it is often not the same large language model, because the same types of issues will also slip through the same model, because it's trained on the same model in the same way. So often a smaller model is used to evaluate this other bigger model that is used in an AI system. And this approach is actually already used by ChatGPT, because there is another model that, based on an answer, if you ask it, how can I build a bomb? Based on the model, it will it will give us a description, but then there is a smaller model that makes sure that the answer is corrected in such a way that it tells us that it's unethical to respond to that question. So we can use an LLM as a tester. Of course, we also have our own offering where we try to incorporate all the quality AI framework aspects and also all the testing methods that we have for our clients. And here, we try to give clients the possibility to harness the power of generative AI in their own environment. And also in a way that is trusted and secure. I want to finalize my talk today by giving a very small brief recap. The main takeaway is if you start working on a generative AI project where you build an AI system, make sure that you split it in certain steps. And in every one of those steps, it is if you focus it on the steps, it is easier to focus on the quality engineering aspects, and to make sure that our models are scalable, but also secure.
Yes. Well, Matthijs, thank you very much. We're going to talk about your presentation, but also about a real practice case at ABN AMRO with our table guests. So please take a seat. And let me introduce our next guest, Lin Yin from ABN AMRO. You're the chapter lead solution design business analysis, and you're active with implementing large language models at ABN AMRO. Please join us here on stage. Give him a big hand. And Tiana Nikolic, artificial intelligence lead at Society, and also fellow at Society Labs. It's a worldwide network consisting of more than 150 technology leaders. Well, great having you with us. Matthijs, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. The other side of the coin, and how can we apply the principles of quality testing to generative AI and the large language models. Tiana, maybe to introduce the case at ABN AMRO, because you are actually working with ABN AMRO in implementing the large language models for their business. Well, Lien, maybe first of all, let's start first with you, because why did ABN AMRO? Why is ABN AMRO engaged with this kind of technology?
Good question. Everybody is probably here aware that we have been working with LLM models for a longer time in basically building our quality loops, especially in testing, in preparing our chatbot. So Anna has been running now for 5 years, and basically we are feeling like, hey, can we not make use of externally built up knowledge to generate the next generation of Anna? So that's why we engaged in working that out and defining and preparing for it.
Yeah. So what can or what will be the next generation? What will be the added value?
That's a very good question. That's also the business asks us a lot. But there are two elements of it. One is the operational cost. Running a chatbot does not mean we can just already write all the text. We have to make a balance between the long tail and short tail, meaning questions that have been asked a lot. We can spend a lot of time writing them, the responses, the dialogues. And on the other hand, we have a long tail where, okay, let's do a search. So basically send the question towards a search engine and get the response back. But all of them are very deterministic, as also Matthijs mentioned. One specific element of generative AI is to have it less deterministic, and humans perceive this as more human, more natural. So that's why we are considering that for the cost efficiency, getting rid of part of the scripting. But on the other hand...
So that's an efficiency output.
That's efficiency output. That's where we started looking, hey, how can we get rid of certain disciplines or spend less time on that. The other side is basically following the trends in the world. There's so much knowledge built up, and we have been building our models ourselves also. And those models are more language-oriented than we can create ourselves, and that's where the business says, hey, let's create more natural dialogues. The ambition of ABN AMRO to be the conversational bank really needs also a really conversational interface layer. And that's why we look at from business perspective to that.
Yeah. So from a customer perspective, then you say we want to be the conversational bank. That's one of our USPs. Then, so you are expecting to add quality.
To add quality, yeah. So especially if you're looking for the areas where now we have to script everything in detail. We expect that, for example, by using LLM models as an agent towards APIs, or if we compare texts that are being generated out of the chatbot versus the generative models, I think we can simplify and be natural in a domain of the questions.
Yeah, because Tiana, you are working together with ABN AMRO. So how? What is what is the challenge you are facing in implementing those models?
Well, Matthijs spoke about it very nicely. These models are probabilistic, so they need to have a very strong governance and testing strategy around them, so that we can actually put something in production, especially customer-facing, that will deliver quality and value to the company. And also, if we go a bit deeper than that, of course, this is how the company is going to be perceived. So we really need to make sure that through the testing iterations that we saw here in different phases, we really capture that. So that's really important to note here, and also Antoine spoke about that. These models are very general, and if you use it on a smaller scope, on a smaller scale or a use case, they can be very context aware, and they can understand what they need to do better. Understand, I'm using these words like it's a human, but it's easier just to relay my message. But then these models get more data and context, then we can also test them more properly. Okay, less edge cases, less general. And what we do in ABN AMRO, we're really focusing on developing guardrails. You all heard of them through LLMs and ChatGPT. And we make sure that these models stay on topic, that they're helping the customer, and then they don't go around giving information about something that they're not supposed to do. So this is what our entire test strategy and governance is about, and we really take it seriously here with ABN AMRO, and we really make sure that everyone understands the governance principles and how we can actually implement this in the processes to deliver this value that you're looking for.
Because what could be the worst case scenario in terms of if the model is not working correctly, or what would be the damage for ABN AMRO?
Quite some liability issues, of course. If we are not controlling what comes out of the chatbot, chatbot is basically seen as a customer care agent. So there's a certain...
Do people know that they actually chat with artificial intelligence?
We will put disclaimers on top where we say, hey, this is automated. But on the other hand, we always have the fallbacks of a customer care agent. So if we feel that, for example, a customer comes back in a few minutes with the same question, or the customer comes in again with maybe just a changed question, we can push that customer towards a customer care agent. So we are really, by choosing the topics, trying to maintain the boundaries of how far and what risk an LLM model could bring to the customer. So probably we will not in the first place do it for privacy sensitive information, because that information is also perceived as human oriented and human interaction based. Probably we will not move that area very quickly now.
And does the system then recognize, for example, if the customer is going to give that kind of information because he or she doesn't really know or is not aware of it? Does the system, or does it recognize that actually he's crossing a border?
Yeah, so what Matthijs also mentioned, it is not only the process getting the answer, but also what gets into the system. Mm-hmm. So we are very strict on it. Every chatbot conversation is being PII approved. before it goes to technical systems. And there we also make a decision on how to treat the call.
Yeah, because Matthijs, in your presentation, you really stressed the importance of the quality engineering principles, to apply them if you're going to use those large language models. Are you still a pioneer in this field, or is it already a well-known thought?
Well, what I often see happening is that in all areas of a company, there are small islands that want to do something new with generative AI. And they're trying to get just enough, just in time, and they just make it work. They try to solve a certain use case.
It's make it a little bit the playground that Antoine and Marion this morning told us about. So it's more, at the moment, it's still the playground, and
exactly.
we have to actually move on to the more...
Yeah, we have to start seeing it as an AI system that needs to be tested thoroughly. And before starting to solve the use case, we need to make sure that we think about, okay, if we can solve it, how are we going to test it? When is our project a success?
Yes.
And creating the whole AI governance around that, making sure that everyone within our organization is doing also the same thing when they do these AI projects. I see that there is a big challenge at the moment.
And do you feel that you're still on a mission?
Yes. Yeah, very much. Yeah, yeah. With the organization that I'm currently working for, also a Dutch bank, a different one, not naming any names.
Well, let's see. We have ABN AMRO. We have no.
But there it's still the mission of the goal of today, making sure that everyone who's working with generative AI knows what the learnings are that we came across during our project.
And you already said don't take the answers that the system is generating, don't take it for granted. You have to be very critical in what the answers are. Maybe it's also nice to ask you, our audience, because we have a Menti question for you as well, because we would like to know what is the main blocker for generative AI, for adopting generative AI in your company. So what would it be? Maybe privacy issues, trust in the correctness of the outcome. That's one of the things that we are talking about. Complexity, not knowing where to start. So just tell us what is actually blocking the adoption of generative AI. You can still use the same code. Maybe you're still in a Menti. And if you're not, I don't know what the code is, to be honest, because it was on a different paper. But everyone is in it, right? Oh, it's over there. It's over there. Okay, and we see the answers over there as well. Privacy issues is it's a main outcome. Trust in the correctness of outcome. Complexity, not knowing where to start. Because Lynn, if you look at these answers, do you recognize them? Were there the same arguments in your organization not to work with it?
Yes and no, because we are already working on a chatbot. We are already thinking about privacy issues, so we have the system in place to make sure that we have the filtering in the front and that we have the filtering in when we store the logs. So really taking care of cleaning the question towards an LLM. That is something that we have been doing already. So the privacy is a little less. But the second topic, like the trust, that's basically, we are really embarking now on the stage to move towards external usage. Internal usage has been going on for years, and of course also those first trial with summarizers, with assisted services internally. Now it's the next step to move to external usage and capitalize on it.
Yeah. Because Tatjana, if you work with other clients instead of ABN AMRO, what do you say? How can you? What are the arguments against those blocks?
For privacy issues, it's of course. Please don't use ChatGPT with the private data. You send the data back to OpenAI and they retrain the models on it. So that's usually the like door opening conversations we have with customers. So they ask us like, okay, we really want to utilize this technology, but we don't want to send our data back to OpenAI. And then we say, okay, we have a partner, Microsoft. They have an OpenAI API on Azure, and they guarantee and they take accountability for the data sharing. So there's no data sharing if you use their OpenAI API on there.
And then it's also about trust, because then you have to trust.
We go forward and we say, okay, privacy issues we fixed. Of course, there's also another thing here that you can think about, and it's food for thought. It's an ethical and like data sourcing issue. These models are huge. They're trained on so much data scraped from the internet. We don't know what sort of data was used. That trace is almost impossible to get. So that's the first part. And then the door opening question, when we tell them, okay, we do have partners and technology that can help with this, mitigate this first issue, we go into the trust, and then we bring the trust layer or the quality AI framework, whatever we want to call it, which we've been working on for years now, where we say...
Because just one question about your answer, because at ABN AMRO, when I as a customer fill in my questions, my problems, the reason why I'm chatting, my answers or my questions or my remarks, they also go into the big... it's also data that's used to improve the model, right?
The chatbot itself.
Yeah, and there we use models, but this is only internal use, fully controlled on local models. So we do use models for similarity checks, for improving the augmentation of utterances, sentences. So, but that's all internal. So those we are talking about human-assisted models, where basically whatever happens, the outcome is still human-controlled and checked and made sure. There's nothing that goes directly into the bot itself to ventilate to customers.
So please continue again, because this was about the privacy issue. Yes, and what is your argument, or what do you say to clients that don't trust the correctness of outcome?
I always say, like, okay, these models are huge, they're very generic and general. We have to take a look at your use case, start with the problem statement, get the data for it, and start testing on that. And of course, get the unhappy flows in there, get the user acceptance testing in there. Otherwise, this is never going to be, you will never trust the outcome if we don't have all of these processes around. And all of these like small granular steps lead to an actual governance and process strategy where we, okay, no, these are the responsible people, these are the accountable people. Usually IT, we know what we need to do from a technical perspective, but also there's someone that tests it and says, yeah, this can go to production. So we really need that governance strategy, not just with LLMs, like every sort of AI solution. That's
and the argument about the complexity, because I can also imagine, it's the answer from you as well, that complexity and not knowing where to start, they feel quite similar maybe. So how do you deal with those arguments, Matthijs?
Not knowing where to start, I would say always start at the beginning. I described in my presentation that there are certain steps to undertake when starting to create a new AI system. And the first step is thinking about what are we actually going to do and how are we going to test the thing that we're going to do.
Yeah, so start at the playground.
Start at the playground, yeah.
Before upscaling towards a serious business. Okay, let me check, because also I'm looking at the time. Are there questions from you, from our audience, to Jana or ABN AMRO Matthijs? No questions? No hands, right? No. Okay, because then I also have a question about the limitations, because I can imagine that maybe we expect too much of the systems of the large language models. Are there also limitations? Is there also a no-go area?
I would say critical decision making, everything that where there's no human anymore involved and it needs to make a decision, that are currently the no-go places. And
because in your presentation, you said it's probably the same level as a human. You were
no, sometimes it seems to be at the same level of humans, but it's not the same as a human. And if we let it go out in the world and make it let it make decisions for us, it can go it can go wrong, of course.
Okay. But it seems like they can think as a human, but you say the critical decision making, that's not something a large language model can do.
Indeed. And we also have the AI Act that the European Union published, and there also they enforce us to not include generative AI or any types of AI system in critical decision-making processes.
Okay. So, Lynn, what do you think? What are the limitations? Are there limitations, or is the sky
What are the
limit.
limitations you ask towards a toddler?
Sorry?
What are the limitations you ask to a toddler? How I see it is basically that we are in LLM models basically on toddler level. So we need guidance, we need to train them, we need to support them, and we need the structure, the family around it to make sure that you can use it to the fullest. So I do think it will move onwards. There will be always gray areas, therefore governance, safeguarding, and yeah, I see it shifting. Where does it end? Yeah, I don't know.
You
It's
tell
open.
me.
I think the customer is most important. So we only use the tooling to support what the customer needs. So if it's an LLM model, we are going to use it because it's cost efficient, potentially more cost efficient than human scripting. But yeah, that's the balance that we have to strike always. The first question I got also this summer, after we did the pressure cooker around next-gen Anna, saying, hey, are those guardrails, those governance, those data qualities, those testing principles, and so, is it not more than just letting some persons write all the scripts? If you don't change your portfolio that much, why do we do this? And this question is, yeah, we did answer, but it will pop up continuously because the further we go, the more family we have to build around it to make sure that it works well.
So you're saying you also have to be aware of the boundaries. You have to be critical on what does the customer want, but what do we want? Can we?
And that's all the balances that we have to strike. And that makes it so difficult in this world to get it also a company-wide approval to use it towards the customer.
Tiana, do you want to add something towards the limitations?
I agree with the script part. Like maintenance of these solutions, if you don't create some boundaries around what they are supposed to do, it's going to become very difficult. And what I see is also, you all know, you've been playing around with ChatGPT. If you wanted to give you like specific answers that are useful, you need to use a lot of words. That's a lot of money. Imagine like having 100 customers coming in with like 600 word prompt or something like that. Imagine also what's happening in the back end, and also Antoine talked about it, is having these system prompts that can be catered to your use case. How do we make sure that those prompts are accepted by all of the subject matter experts in quality engineering testing, for example, that they're actually correct? Because this is like what we use to constrain the model. That also goes into safeguards. It's all words, it's all language. And this is something we haven't done so far. This is really new to LLMs. And that might, like in maintenance-wise, be a challenge. But of course, we're working on it, and industry-specific prompt templates could help here, definitely. And asking the users, crowdsourcing these sort of information it can be an answer to it, yeah.
Well, I think it was very... You have a question? Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, next time. Yeah, because we are actually running out of time. So I would like to thank you very much to give us an insight in the kitchen of ABN AMRO and about all the considerations in working with the large language models and also the quality principles, the principles of quality engineering to adopt them. So thank you very much, Matthijs van Bree, Linier, and Tiana Nikolic. That's the way. Give them a big hand. Thank you so much.